things have really changed, I think, over the last little while, but you, of all people, will have seen it coming, of course. I just wonder where things are now, given the detail that's coming out, the rumours, very little that's actually been confirmed by governments anyway, in regard to Storm Shadow missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. Where are we with this, do you think?
Well, it is very complicated and it changes practically by the minute. So it is very difficult to tell. I think in the slightly bigger context, I think what we're seeing is the use by practically everybody involved in this conflict. Ukraine itself, the supporters of Ukraine, such as the UK, the US, the Europeans, and the Russians on the other side. Everybody is looking towards the 20th of January, which is when Donald Trump is inaugurated and returns to the White House. And it seems that everybody is trying to get the last scrap of advantage before Donald Trump comes in and possibly tries to deliver on his promise to end the war within 24 hours. So that's what I think is going on in the slightly bigger picture.
Can I ask a naive question just in regard to that, Mary? If you're saying they're getting the last scrap of advantage, is that, I mean, in a sense, what's the point of that? In a sense, do you just want to be in a stronger negotiating position when Trump comes in and he says he wants to end it very quickly, as you correctly say? I mean, why escalate things now when you know that in 2 months' time things are going to change dramatically? Why not just say, right, we're going to continue to fight, but just elongate what is happening already? Why escalate?
Well, I think this is a very fair and a very sensible question. The problem is that probably every party concerned doesn't see it like that. And I was very interested in Keir Starmer's statement this afternoon, because he was reiterating the British position since the very beginning, that we will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes, this, that and the other, even though we may be less than 2 months from the situation changing completely with a new president in the White House. But there were also, it seemed to me, two slightly different strands that came into what Keir Starmer was saying. And one of them was, in a way, what you referred to as saying that we want to put Ukraine in the best possible position it can be. And the way Starmer phrased it was to say something like in advance of the winter or something like that. Now, that's not what is usually said in these circumstances. What's usually said is either, in advance of negotiations or just in the best possible position for victory. That's been the British position pretty much until now. So I think we've seen some slight tweaks which actually acknowledge that what's happening is a certain jockeying for position, everybody trying to boost their negotiating status before the middle of January.
What happens then, do you think? What does Trump do?
Well, I think that is also a very, very interesting question, because I don't think you can't rule out that Trump is very, very serious about wanting this war to end. And the reason he gives are the reasons that, I have to say that I've been saying since whenever, to stop the killing, to stop people dying, to stop people being maimed, to allow the survival of Ukraine as a viable state. Those are all reasons. They're pro-Ukraine reasons.
And actually reasons, Mary, that I know we've talked about this for a couple of years on various programmes, and I know you've been saying this, you've been very, very consistent. Yes. And the point is, as you worked out, I think, a lot earlier on than many Western leaders, this is going to end at some point. What does that actually look like? And maybe Trump is actually thinking in that way, in a way that other people are just saying, well, we're just going to give more money and more training and use certain types of weapons and so on indefinitely, which to me doesn't seem sensible.
No, I agree. And I think that the people, not just Trump, but the people around him have quite a good appreciation of where things stand and how this could actually be brought to an end. And I don't think you should exclude the possibility that Trump will have an effect on this. And if not in 24 hours, then you can almost now, you can see the outline. And the first thing that can happen is that he can actually force Ukraine into the talks, which it says it's not interested in and it doesn't want to happen. Why? Because Ukraine is completely dependent on Western arms supplies. And even if the Europeans would continue to supply military aid, if the Americans stopped doing it, that it would be very, very difficult for Ukraine to carry on the war. The other thing that's happening is that there is some suggestion that Russia also wants to end the war. Now, I don't see that as Russia being pressured either by its current economic situation or by the political situation to end the war from its point of view. What I do think is that Trump has cards against Russia, as he does to persuade Ukraine. And he could say to Russia that if you're not interested in getting to the negotiating table, if you're not interested in altering any of your conditions for ending this war, then no, the United States might continue to supply and even increase the supply of help to Ukraine. There are cards that Trump can hold to pressurize both sides, and I don't think he'll be beyond using them.
No, I totally agree with you, Mary. Fascinating to talk to you, as always. I've learned so much, as I always do, from interviewing you. Mary Dejevsky there, a columnist and former correspondent in Moscow. We'll talk more about Trump a little bit later on, because Matt Gaetz, who is his nominee for Attorney General of the United States, controversial person, well, he has withdrawn his nomination. That's a big blow for the Trump transition. He was considered to be one of the most important picks, and of course Donald Trump, lots of interest, some would say an obsession with the Department of Justice, which he believes has pursued him and conducted witch hunts against him for 8 years, including the 4 years he was in power the first time between 2017 and 2021, even though of course his own nominees were in charge at that point. So this is a very high profile, very important nomination, and Gaetz's withdrawal is a huge blow. We're going to talk about that between now and 7. We're also going to talk next about police officers in Essex withdrawing their probe into the journalist Alison Pearson over a social media post that she put up over a year ago. Stay with us here on Talk.